Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I'm here today with Morley Robbins. Morley received his BA in biology from Denison University in Ohio and holds an MBA from George Washington University in healthcare administration, with additional concentrations in finance and marketing management. Morley has completed his training for becoming a wellness coach, a nutritional counselor, and a functional diagnostic nutritionist. Morley Robbins is the creator of the Root Cause Protocol. Morley, aka Magnesium Man, is one of the foremost experts on magnesium's role in the body and the delicate dance magnesium plays with iron, copper, and calcium. In 2012, Morley founded the Magnesium Advocacy Group, gotmag.org, and he remains the de facto leader of the Magnesium Advocacy Group on Facebook with over 175,000 members and growing daily. As a certified health coach with an expertise in tissue mineral analysis, HTMA, Morley has performed over 4,500 one-on-one consultations with clients from around the world. Morley has a mainstream medical industry background, and he had been a hospital executive consultant for 32 years. But he developed a condition called frozen shoulder, and his doctor quickly recommended surgery as the only hope for Morley to be able to move his right arm again above his waist. And his initial response was, "Thanks, guys, but I don't do witchcraft," when they suggested he go to a chiropractor. Now he's married to one, if that tells you anything. But several months later, the pain was wearing on him, so he finally agreed to go. And the light touch chiropractic care network spinal analysis, his shoulder got full range of motion again. This was life-changing for Morley, so he began questioning everything he ever knew or thought he knew about healing. He left the world of hospital administration and he dove deep down the rabbit hole. And there's just so much about Morley. He is my instructor for the course I've been taking for 14 weeks called the Root Cause Protocol. I learned so much. It was crazy overwhelming at the beginning. And then I just didn't want it to end. I started really getting into it and loving it. And now I realize this is that, it's even though you're out of school, it's a lifelong learning process and you just keep learning. And so I hope you guys learn a lot from what he has to say today. He talks a lot about what the root cause protocol is, what type of magnesium we need to relieve our stress, why and how we should take vitamin D. Should it be from the sunlight? Should it be D3? He talks about zinc. He dispels the myths about absorbic acid, zinc, magnesium, and just everything health today, you guys. This is quite a lesson. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this with the one, the only, Morley Robbins. Let's dive in. I am more than excited to welcome Morley Robbins to the Sisterhood of Sweat today.
Well, I can't wait. This is going to be a baptism by fire, I have a feeling, Linda. It's going to be a lot of fun to have this conversation.
I've you guys, for those of you that don't know, I have been taking a course. Well, it was only supposed to be 14 weeks, but I think it ended up being about 16 because we had holidays and things in between, but with Morley Robbins, and the course is called the Root Cause Protocol. And I'm going to actually have you kind of explain what is the root cause protocol.
Yeah, no, it's a great place to start. I grew up in a very sickly family, and I was supposed to become a doctor because my sister had become a nurse, and there were only 18 medical schools who disagreed with me. So if you can't become a doctor, you become a hospital administrator, so you can boss them around. So I did that. Worked in hospitals for 12 years, and then I've spent 20 years as a consultant helping hospitals grow. I was pretty good at it. And then I developed what's called frozen shoulder. And I couldn't pick my hand up above my waist. And it was from pulling a suitcase from behind me for 20 years. And finally, my body said, we're done. We're not doing that anymore. And that forced me into the world of natural healing. I didn't know there was such a thing. And then my now wife, who's a chiropractor, and she introduced me to a term in the very first encounter. She was talking about the innate healer of the human body. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't say anything to her at the time. I think, innate healer? Why do we have hundreds of thousands of doctors if there's an innate healer inside? And so I went on a quest over the better part of a decade to find out, who is this innate healer? Well, now I know who it is. And that's what we teach in the course, which is really based on getting people to understand that we live on a planet with a lot of oxygen and a lot of iron. And those two like to butt heads. And when they do butt heads, it creates rust. And we know that
we have rust, because I think some of us say, I'm getting old. I feel like I'm getting rusty. We really actually do have rust.
Yeah, we don't, and we know what a rusty nail looks like, and a rusty pipe, and a rusty car, but we never realized that rusting process was happening inside the body. And the important thing is, when there is stress outside of your body, you're creating oxidative stress inside the body, and that's the formal name for rust, oxidative stress. And so the RCP, root cause protocol, basically another way to describe it is restore copper protocol, because copper, bioavailable copper, is the only mineral on planet Earth that can regulate both oxygen and iron. And it's absolutely amazing what it does inside the body. But basically, copper is designed to create energy and clear exhaust. And it does it in amazing ways that apparently is not taught in doctor school. And the RCP is really designed to help people use their diet and targeted supplements to lower the iron footprint in the body, which is the source of all aging. Aging is just a polite way of saying iron toxic. And so we're trying to lower iron, and we're trying to increase magnesium and bioavailable copper, because we got to have those two to make energy. It's absolutely essential. And so it's 14 weeks of going through that process and various incantations, so people feel really clear and confident about how to help others restore their copper as well.
What do you say to the people or the experts out there that say, oh gosh, you're a copperhead and you have too much copper in your body and it's making you tired and draining your energy?
Well, the world of medicine and nutrition is dominated by grade school mentality. High-low, I mean, we used like rulers, right, to measure high-low. And what's really interesting is all of the guys and gals that I went to college with who did get into medical school all got an A in very advanced mathematics called calculus, right?
Yes.
And now they're reduced to using rulers to measure high-low. And what it's like we drive cars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the cars have a gauge that run from full to empty. And that's high-low mentality, high-low. But if we keep going to the gas station to fill up our car, we've got to start to use algebra that we used in high school. And algebra starts to introduce variables. And the one that's important for driving a car is called miles per gallon. And when you're getting 30 to 35 miles per gallon, life is good. When you start to get 10 to 12, it's time to take the car in and get it tuned up. And this idea that copper is high or low, no, it's the word that's missing in medicine and nutrition, particularly as it relates to copper, is it bioavailable? Is it doing the work that it's designed to do? And if it's not, what caused the copper to become unbound from its key protein called ceruloplasm? The term unbound copper is an abbreviation from a sentence that was used by Carl Pfeiffer, who was an MD, PhD at Princeton, and he was referring to copper metabolism. And in the sentence, I found the article, I know exactly where it started. He made reference to the fact that copper can become unbound from ceruloplasm. And then people decided to, let's shorten it, let's make it more convenient. And we're going to talk about unbound copper. And then unbound copper became copper toxic, became copperhead. And the question that's not being asked by practitioners or nutritionists or exercise physiologists or whoever, trainers, is what caused the copper to become unbound? And more often than not, it's because people are taking iron supplements, vitamin D supplements, ascorbic acid, citrate, and we can
Pretty
go on.
much the American plan for their vitamins.
No, that's exactly right. And what people don't realize, we now have 2020 vision about what happened last year.
Yeah.
There's no pretense about what was going on.
Right. It's starting to become very clear and lots of clarity there.
Yeah, we're wide awake and we have this 2020 vision now. And people don't realize what was behind the COVID cocktail of vitamin D, zinc, and ascorbic acid. Those three supplements alone will destroy the bioavailability of copper. And because people don't know what copper does, people don't know the reason why you and I are having this conversation, the reason why we're here having this conversation on really sophisticated technology is because it takes a lot of IQ to create things like computers, to have conversations like this. Well, in order to have IQ, you got to have a lot of energy. To have a lot of energy, you got to have a lot of mitochondria. To have a lot of mitochondria, you must have a lot of copper, because there's 50,000 atoms of copper in one mitochondria, and we have 40 quadrillion in our body. You probably have more because you're buff, right? And the thing is, 40 quadrillion is 15 zeros. So people don't realize how dependent we are on bioavailable copper to make energy, and that energy runs the metabolism of the body. That energy is what creates the electric fence that keeps the bugs at bay. And that's not taught anywhere on the planet except in the institute that you've just graduated from.
Yay! And at first I was like overwhelmed. And then I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I couldn't get enough of it. And then I'm like, oh, darn, it's over. But it's never really over because you can be a lifelong learner. And today I'm hoping that we can bring to you some of the things I learned in the course so you guys can be more educated about what's really good for your body. Why should we try to get vitamin D from being outdoors versus D3, more D3?
How much time do we have? Here's the deal. People have been trained like circus bears to believe that the sun only stimulates the synthesis of vitamin D. And it's true. It's absolutely very, very important. And that's how our ancestors would stimulate the process. But the sunlight does a lot of things. But probably the most important thing from our standpoint is that sunlight causes the breakdown of vitamin A into what are called retinoids. Like, ooh, that's a scary word. But what are retinoids? Well, they're another class of hormones, and they also become what are called nuclear receptors. And people don't know about this because they're suffering from dementia. Everything's DDD, and they don't realize that the attributes that are assigned to vitamin D, and it actually is a hormone, but the attributes that are assigned to vitamin D are actually the active form of the hormone, not the storage form. And they're taking bucketfuls of storage, hoping that it becomes active, but it actually can go 10 different directions. People don't know that. And so they don't realize that the active form needs to hook up with something called the vitamin D receptor, VDR, which is magnesium dependent, and the VDR and the active D need to marry up with what's called RXR, retinoid X receptor. It's a very powerful and important nuclear receptor. And if the three of them don't come together, no can do. And so the immune busting properties of vitamin D is totally dependent on a magnesium based receptor and a vitamin A dependent nuclear receptor. And that's totally lost on the fearful set who are quaking in their boots about some mythical parasite that creates a viral byproduct. That'll get people.
I did catch on to that now. For anybody listening, perk your ears up a little bit.
Yeah.
So like for my avid listeners out there,
Yeah.
can you break it down? How can they get, first of all, their bioavailable copper, the easiest way they could get it and make sure they're having it? And then you were talking about retinol. Before your class, I only really knew about retinol for my face.
Of course, that's exactly
yeah, it
right.
makes your skin look great. And now I realize how important retinol is for me for the copper and the vitamin D.
Exactly. And again, what people need to understand is that again, back to last year, let's do some quick math. The book that I key in on is 1984. And when you subtract its publication date, 1948, you get the number 36. You add 36 to 1984, and what do you get? 2020. Voila. So we're living 1984. And what was that book about? What is black is white. What is white is black. We don't need to get political.
It's opposite day.
Yeah, everything's opposite day. We don't have to worry about which political party we're in. The world as we know it is the exact opposite of what we think it is. And so, to your point about retinol, it's what runs the inside of our body, but we've been trained to think that it's only good for our face. And so it's the exact opposite of what we really should understand. And so the key is that retinol, vitamin A, is what loads copper into its enzymes so that copper can be activated. So the letter A is what enables copper to become activated. And the challenge is because people don't know what copper is other than the copperhead. They're like, oh, I don't want more copper. It's
yeah,
like,
because copperhead's a snake. So that makes you think, oh, that's got to be bad.
It's got to be bad. When in fact,
poisonous.
It's hard to realize that 2.5 billion years ago, there was a time, but 2.5 billion years ago, there was no oxygen. And then oxygen started to appear. And then the planet had to figure out, what are we going to do with this oxygen? And copper came to our rescue. And the most important thing that copper does is it turns oxygen, O2, into water, 2H2O, two molecules of water, and that's what releases the energy. You've spent quite an illustrious career pumping iron, right?
Yes, and also I've been told so many times back in the day that I was anemic.
Okay, and you were pumping iron, right? And you were using energy to pump iron, right? Yes. And you didn't know the whole time that you had to have copper to do that inside your muscles.
No.
No one ever told you that. And they told you were anemic, and they never said that, oh, actually, everything that involves iron requires a copper chaperone, requires a copper protein or a copper enzyme. And that's never been brought to the forefront because they don't want us knowing the truth, for heaven's sake. And so when you were told you were anemic, did you take iron supplements?
Yes, but you know what? I couldn't assimilate the iron. So I just like maybe took a few and I was done. And then I tried taking iron that was made from food.
Right, right.
But for the most part, I just couldn't. It just would cause me constipation, just to be blunt. But
Oh yeah, but for your listeners, the reason why is you didn't have enough copper in your digestive tract to metabolize it. So there's two steps to digesting iron. The first step is iron needs to get into cells that are called the enterocytes. Enterocyte, site is a word for cell. So they get into the enterocytes, but then in order to get into the bloodstream, that's the second step, there's a doorway and there's a copper doorman that opens that doorway that lets the iron into the bloodstream. And it's really important for the copper doorman to be there because it turns iron into a form. It can be attached to the transport protein called transferrin. And when transferrin's there and copper's there, the iron gets on there and zoop, it goes either to the bone marrow or to the liver for future reference. And that's what allows the bone marrow to make new blood cells. It's really important. And to give the listeners a sense of the order of magnitude, every second of every day, every second, our bone marrow needs to make 2 to 3 million red blood cells. That's a big number. We've been talking now for about 20 minutes, times 60. The numbers get really big, really fast. Well, inside every red blood cell are a bazillion hemoglobin, and inside every hemoglobin are 4 heme. So we're talking enormous numbers every second of every day. And it depends on copper. And all we hear about is iron, iron, iron. And so the world is awash in confusion because they've been trained to think that anemia means lack of iron, when in fact what the research is clearly showing now is that it's a lack of bioavailable copper that prevents the proper movement of iron, the recycling of iron, the circulation of iron to allow the bone marrow to get the raw goods that they need to meet up that 2 to 3 million red blood cells per second demand. It's fascinating that the information is there, but it takes a certain degree of persistence to find it. And I'm like a dog with a bone. I won't rest until I figure it out. And I think I wouldn't say that I've mastered it, but I think I know a thing or two that a lot of practitioners and nutritionists don't seem to understand the core principles of how the body works.
well, I just have to say that, it's like people going to the extreme. I'll use calcium as an example, where we are the highest milk drinking country, but we have the highest incidence of osteoporosis. So more calcium in everything is not the answer. I mean, actually, you need some manganese and you need other things, and leafy greens are a better form of getting the calcium in your bones. So, so many fallacies as far as what we think we should be doing and what is the real truth. And we're going to dispel some of those myths today. And with iron, it's like more iron doesn't give you more iron.
No,
Put
it
more
doesn't.
iron in the body doesn't make you able to utilize it.
Yeah, we're back to the miles per gallon. When was the last time adding more gas to your gas tank improved your miles per gallon? It doesn't work that way. It's just people got to start to think, wait a minute, he's right. It doesn't make any sense. And so using the reference point of osteoporosis, that's a really important one, because what is unique about iron, we can't live without it. But people don't realize that 80% of it is a waiter carrying oxygen. We've all been to fancy restaurants. We know what waiters do. They do a great job, and we love interacting with them. But what do waiters do? They carry the food to us, right? And that's what iron does in our blood. 80% of the iron in our body is carrying oxygen to the tissue so it can make water, so it can make energy. And who's the chef? The chef inside the cell takes that oxygen, slices and dices it, and turns it into energy. That's what happens inside the mitochondria. And so let's focus on the chef, not the waiter. And what people don't realize is that the iron has many different properties, but the two that I think are the most important is that iron is the only element that causes calcium loss in the hard tissue called bone, and iron is the only mineral that causes calcium buildup in the soft tissue called our arteries, our eyes, our gallbladder, and so on and so forth. And as soon as I am talking to a client who has osteoporosis, I'm asking about their heart status. Because as soon as you have osteoporosis and calcium loss there, I know the calcium's going to the arteries, and there are enzymes involved. And there's a very important enzyme called acid phosphatase. And acid phosphatase is what breaks down the bone matrix to release the calcium and other minerals. And guess what acid phosphatase is activated by? Iron. Well, there's some really important enzymes that reverse all of that. Alkaline phosphatase is what helps the bone cells to, osteoblasts is what they're called, the bone cells, to make new bone matrix. Well, alkaline phosphatase requires magnesium, but then you've also got to have two other enzymes. One is called lysyl oxidase. And once you see the word oxidase, it means oxygen's involved. Well, as soon as you see oxygen's involved, you better think copper. So lysyl oxidase is what knits collagen and elastin together to give bone or give any tissue its strength and integrity. Well, the other enzyme that's involved is called ascorbate oxidase, ding, 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 another copper enzyme. And that's the enzyme that actually prevents mineral loss in the bone. And so people have never heard about magnesium and copper. They're doing what? And all they've been trained to think about is calcium, and thinking that either taking calcium supplements or drink more dairy is going to solve the problem. No, adding more calcium isn't going to solve an iron problem. And it's just, people don't realize that the calcium in our body is regulated by magnesium. And people don't realize that the iron in our body is regulated by copper. And it's just, these are principles that are in the literature, but it takes time, it takes diligence to learn that, and then begin to understand the communication that takes place inside the body around these minerals, which are so vitally important to our health and well-being.
Well, one of the things I found fascinating that gave me immediate relief in the course, because I'm postmenopausal. So learning that a good way to chelate, because I'm not chelating it out anymore through a menstrual cycle, to chelate out the iron, which was causing me to have aches and pains I've never had. All of a sudden, just because that happened, it was like, boom, night and day. And when you said, oh, you should, regularly give blood donations, I gave a blood donation. It was like almost immediate, the relief that I felt. So I can hardly wait to do it again. And another guy in the class was talking about how he had muscle wasting from all of the iron. And I was kind of experiencing that a little. I think I caught it early enough. So can you kind of explain to people why it's good for them to donate blood?
Yeah, well, very simple. We're designed, women are designed to have about 4,000 milligrams of iron, and guys about 5,000. And a good exercise for people to do is take their age and multiply it times 365. And when you do that, I'm 68, and the number is 25,000. So I've got 25,000 milligrams of iron in my body, and I'm supposed to have 5, right?
That's a lot. Okay.
Yeah. And so I don't know what your age is, but you can do the math. And that's what people don't realize is, again, what I said a few minutes ago. All the symptoms of aging, including muscle wasting syndrome, are all triggered by excess iron interacting with that oxygen molecule, and that creates rust, creates oxidative stress inside the body. And what oxidative stress does is it disrupts a lot of enzyme activity. We've got about 9,000 enzymes that run our body. And if there's a lot of rust running around, it's going to make things really messy. And the rule of thumb is if someone is a male or postmenopausal female, they should be donating blood every quarter for the rest of their life. It's a very simple rule of thumb. And what we're doing is we're lowering the iron footprint, getting it closer to that ideal of 4,000 or 5,000 milligrams. And if women are still having a menstrual cycle, they should do it at least twice a year. And I'm sure there are people listening to this right now thinking, oh my God, I couldn't possibly do that because I'm anemic. And I've got videos and a half a dozen articles that say you're not anemic. You don't have enough bioavailable copper to regulate the iron that you do have. And when iron is not in circulation, when iron is not being properly regulated by copper, it goes into storage. There's nothing good that comes from storing iron. Iron was designed to be circulating in our body 24/7. And what we've been trained, again, 1984, everything's backwards. What we've been trained to think is that iron needs to be in this ferritin protein, wink, wink, that's good. If I have a lot of ferritin, wink, wink, then I'm really in good shape. Not knowing that the ferritin that's supposed to be inside their cells, but when it shows up in their blood, those are empty shotgun cells. The iron's already been discharged into the tissue. That's not good.
Right. It's strapped in there.
It's trapped in there, right. And when serum ferritin starts to rise, you have a serious problem with your liver. And when serum ferritin starts to really fall and get below 20, I think it's a safe bet you've got parasites in your spleen. Well, those are things people have never heard before. And so it's a whole different understanding, not based on my ideas. I'm just a step-down transformer for 8,000 articles that I've read over the last 10 years. And by the grace of God, knock on wood, I seem to have a command and a recall that people half my age struggle to have. And I'm just very blessed to be able to share this information with people who are open to the truth and want to learn how their body really works.
And it's so fascinating. I mean, I think I'm going to have you back on because I am like enjoying this discussion, and I can just see all the avenues that we could take to really bring some truth and enlightenment to everybody out there that's listening. And I was just very amazed at all of the knowledge that you have and the information and the way that it all connects to helping everybody to get healthier. And one of the things that really struck a chord when we would do our consults and, our case studies,
Yep.
It was always amazing to me to watch how it was all related to your stress. It was all related. Everything that came after the first thing that started was the stress. And that to me was significant. And it's one of the things I've always said was, it doesn't matter how much you work out. It doesn't matter how much you eat right. If you have tons of stress, it can kill you.
No, it's true. No, it is. And the grandfather of stress is a guy named Hans Selye, brilliant scientist who had an MD, a PhD, and a doctorate in science. The guy was brilliant. And he said, stress doesn't kill you. It's your reaction to it. That's what
You're not managing it well.
Exactly. And so the thing
stress
is,
management.
Yeah, I think what would be a fun exercise to do if you're game, we could do your consult online.
Oh, holy crap! I never did do it before.
No, I think it'd be a blast.
I'm just teasing you.
No,
Yes, I'm game.
but I think your listeners would get a real kick out of the whole reversal of finding out, wait a minute, the stress thing is the problem. And like we said, when there's stress outside the body, it becomes oxidative stress. One case was, muscle wasting is a sign of oxidative stress.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, people need to begin to connect those dots. But the real important thing for people to realize is that there are tools and techniques that you can do to lower your stress, like emotional freedom technique or EMDR. There's a lot of different modalities. And it completely changes the physiology of the body when you do that. Because when we have that stress, we're carrying a load with that stress. And my all-time favorite definition of stress is by Mark Hyman, who said
I
stress.
love him. Yeah.
Yeah, a very talented guy, very gifted physician.
Yes.
And he said stress is the body's inability to make energy for the mind to respond to its environment. And that's like, yes, it makes so much sense. And people don't realize, just as you said a minute ago, you're not metabolizing your stress. Well, what that's saying is you're not making the energy you need to respond to whatever the threat is that you're perceiving, because how you perceive stress is different than how if you suddenly asked me to bench press 200 pounds, I would find 100 things I need to do before I need to do that. And you could probably do it, no problem. And I was like, so that's joy for you. It's stress for me. And that's what goes through people's mind. They don't realize that we all have a different threshold of stress. But the important thing is, it doesn't matter what our threshold is, it's causing rust as long as we perceive it's stress. And that's what we need to do, is get on top of that.
You want to get rid of that rust, because I know everybody listening, they want to stay young, feel young, and just be young as long as they can. And that just to me is the quality of your cells and just the quality of what you're putting in your body, how you're taking care of your body, your mind. I mean, I don't know if everybody out there understands when you talked about EFT, what is it exactly? And some people feel like it's this woo-woo science,
Right.
And I might be kind of in the middle. I don't really understand, what is EFT?
Well, it is woo-woo, but it works. Let's just, Gary Craig is the founder of it. He was a clinical psychologist, and he was looking for ways to help his patients separate themselves from the electrical charge that exists with stress. There's always energy around a negative event. And it's a modality that uses acupressure points. There's different points in the body that you're using to tap on. And as you do that, you're saying a very reaffirming and positive thing. And what most
I definitely believe in positive affirmations.
Oh, absolutely. But basically what you're doing is you're acknowledging that you have a problem. And then as the process continues, you end it by saying, and I love, accept, and approve myself. And most people don't realize that when they are in their normal state of mind, they're always finding criticism with themselves. They're called automatic negative thoughts. They're called ants. And we're constantly filled with ants all day long. I wish I could have done that. I wish I shouldn't have done that. We're always beating
ourselves up.
Always beating ourselves up. And that creates a lot of stress inside. It creates a lot of negative energy inside. And what EFT is designed to do is just cut the cord of those negative thoughts and the whole sense of self that comes with a negative experience. It separates it. And it's not that a negative event didn't happen, because we know it did, but the electrical charge, the impact it has on our perception and our thought process is released in that process. That's pretty powerful. Pretty powerful.
I think that was the best explanation that I've had about it. And I think that it's really important when you're explaining things like this to really go to that detail. So everybody out there gets a chance to kind of understand it. And one of the things you said earlier that I think they may not know, what is ceruloplasm?
Doesn't everyone know that? Oh my God. So,
It's
ceru-
important, but like explain to them what it is and why.
ceruloplasmin, big word. Cerulo means blue, plasmin means blood, plasma. And it was discovered by two Swedish physiologists in 1948, Holmberg and Laurel, and they thought they discovered the Holy Grail. And when Big Pharma got wind of it, they've done everything they can in the last 70 years to try to kill it. So what is ceruloplasmin? It's the master antioxidant protein that has 8 copper atoms inside it. It's a beast of a protein. And
I'm into protein. We all are in this fitness realm.
that's right. But this protein is designed to stop the oxidative stress. I've identified 24 different functions for ceruloplasmin in the body. And what people may or may not know is that the model of the world of big pharma is one gene, one protein, one function. And they don't like a protein that has 24 functions. It's very threatening to their business model. And when copper is in that protein, it can literally transform and transmutate and enable different enzyme activity depending upon what the circumstance is. So the expression I've used is, oh, do you want roller skates? Oh, do you want a skateboard? Do you want a tricycle? Do you want a bike? Do you want a car? And ceruloplasm can transform and create all of these different entities to fight the different orders of oxidative stress that occur in our body. And what's important for people to realize is there is no medical disease. It doesn't exist. There's metabolic dysfunction. That's a fact. And the byproduct of metabolic dysfunction is oxidative stress. And what causes the metabolic dysfunction? Mineral dysregulation. And if copper and iron aren't working right, that's going to cause magnesium to leave the body. It happens as soon as we have stress, goes right into our urine, goes right into the toilet. People didn't know that. The global loss of magnesium in 2020 is staggering to think about, because
Yes.
one of the greatest causes of stress is restraint stress. They do studies with rats and mice.
We feel imprisoned.
and we feel completely powerless. Well, there's massive loss of magnesium in those circumstances. People didn't know that. And as soon as magnesium goes down, then the potential for oxidative stress takes off like a rocket. And so these very simple principles are very, very important. And people need to realize that they can have control over these levers through their diet and through supplementation. And you asked a number of minutes ago, what are the best sources of copper? Well, it's bee pollen, real vitamin C, not ascorbic acid. That could be a whole conversation that we have off
It could be a whole podcast.
the whole podcast. But real vitamin C has an enzyme at the center called tyrosinase. And tyrosinase is not just about skin color, eye color, hair color. It's so much more. And then the form of copper that we really recommend is grass-fed beef liver, everyone's favorite. I've talked to 6,500 people in 10 years. I have a list of 13 people who got excited they could eat beef liver again. Everyone else wanted to run the other way. But the important thing is,
My mother always made it every week for us.
right? Yeah, right. And so grass-fed means the natural diet for the cow. And what people don't know is that there's 14 times more beta carotene in grass than there is in carrots. And there's 18 times more vitamin C in grass than there is in oranges. And so we don't understand what happened when animals stopped eating grass and started eating grain, what that did to destroy our physiology.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm seeing what you're saying right now, right there.
Huge changes. And so the people who are awake are realizing that they need to be very discerning about what they eat. It's got to be grass-fed wherever possible. It's got to be organic. Get away from the commercial farming as much as possible. And if the food that you're eating is coming in a box or a can or the frozen food section or your car window, it's not really food. And stop eating that. And go spend more time at farmers markets. And if you can't find it at a farmer's market, go to a supermarket, but only shop the perimeter of the supermarket. Don't ever go into the center of the store, because that's where all the boxes and cans and frozen food are. And those are some simple principles that people can use to begin to simplify their diet so it's going to be more supportive to making energy.
And this is so much in alignment with everything that I teach. So I'm loving it. Tell everybody why they shouldn't be supplementing then with zinc. Is that going to take a whole podcast too?
No, I'll make it really simple. Let's go back to those enterocytes, those little cells inside the intestine. They're the first line of absorption. Well, they play very important roles. But when they are, and there's something called the mucosal lining. There's mucus that covers the enterocytes, and they have the ability, when they are in the presence of zinc, to make a very powerful protein called metallothionein. Metal, right? And so it's a metal chelator. So when you take a zinc supplement, it gets the metallothionein all fired up inside the mucosal layer of the digestive tract. And what most people don't know, what most practitioners don't know, what most nutritionists don't know, is that metallothionein binds up copper 1,000 times stronger than it binds up zinc. So we can't relate to 1,000 times stronger. Think of someone who's twice as strong as you are, maybe 3 times as strong as you are. You know, I don't know how much you can bench press, but think of someone who can bench press 500 pounds. That's a really strong person. And they can get a real hold on somebody. But think of 1,000 times stronger. And so when you take a zinc supplement, you're stimulating the production of metallothionein, and you're binding up any copper that might be in your diet, and it's going to slough off, as all mucus cells and all the enterocytes do, every 72 hours. They only live for 72 hours. And then there's this lining that just sloughs off in our waste matter, and there goes your copper. And that's not taught in doctor school. That's not taught in dietitian school. And I think that needs to change, because people need to know that there is a price to pay for these popular conventional nutrients that are the mainstay of most people's one-a-days. And they don't realize that they're actually working against their health and physiology, because they're getting way too much calcium, way too much iron. They're not getting the right kind of copper. They're getting synthetic B vitamins from coal tar derivatives. Google that one. That'll keep you busy for a day or two. And they're not getting the right sources for their nutrients. And that's why we really try to promote whole food wherever possible. And we are very targeted about the supplements that we recommend in the root cause protocol.
We're going to give you guys a link to the manual at the end, but I have a loaded question for you now. Why do you say that the real pandemic is metabolic syndrome?
Well, metabolic syndrome used to be restricted to cardiology. It used to be restricted to people with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and high blood sugar. That was a classic definition in the 60s and 70s, and maybe early 80s, was metabolic syndrome. It's now been broadened. And now it's not just the heart conditions, it's now been broadened to include cancer, neurodegeneration, endometriosis, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And those 8 categories are now affecting 40% of humanity on this planet. So what's 40% of 8 billion people? That's 3.2 billion people. That's a lot of people. The numbers
That
are
would make you rich. If you
exactly.
were a big pharma, you could figure that out.
Well, exactly. And the thing is, what people don't know, and this would be a fun conversation to have at another time, is that at the center of all of that metabolic chaos is a metabolic pathway called AMPK. And people don't know what that means. They don't know that AMPK is, in fact, the Intel chip that's in every one of our mitochondria. And it's the Intel chip that really runs the metabolism of our body.
Mm-hmm.
And so when 40% of humanity is suffering from one or more of the conditions of metabolic syndrome, I know that AMPK has been silenced. And
How do we unsilence it?
Stop. One quick thing to do to really help is stop eating or drinking anything that has high fructose corn syrup in it. That would be a massive shift. Lower the amount of sugar that you're ingesting. Lower the amount of iron that you're ingesting. Because every good guy has a bad guy, right? AMPK's nemesis is called mTOR, MTOR, and they're polar opposites. And what activates mTOR? Iron. Ding, ding, ding. And who does AMPK have a relationship with? Copper. Ding, ding, ding. And so we're back to copper and iron duking it out inside our body. But in the world of homeopathy, copper is called the general, and iron is called the foot soldier. And so in our body, for every atom of copper, there's 60 atoms of iron. In the Army, I looked it up today. I was curious to know what the actual numbers were. In our United States Army, there's 200, by law, there's only 231 generals, but there's 480,000 foot soldiers. The ratio is 2,000 to 1. So we got to think about it as the copper is the general. Do you only need 231 people to tell 480,000 people how to live their life? Think about that. And it only takes 100 milligrams of copper. 100 milligrams fits on the head of a stick pin. 100 milligrams of copper rules 4,000 to 5,000 milligrams of iron. And people need to understand the majesty and the magic of bioavailable copper and what it does. And it's particularly important for this AMPK that prevents and neutralizes metabolic syndrome. And that could be a fun conversation for us to have.
So good today. Oh my goodness. I'm like, I need another conversation. We'll have to have you back on, and I'll do my tissue mineral analysis and blood tests for everybody to kind of see how that works.
I think they get a kick out of that.
Oh, it'll be amazing. And I'm sure.
As long as you're willing to talk about your stress.
Oh, I'm willing. Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. No, just kidding. Tell everybody where they can get the root cause protocol manual so they can kind of get invested in some of the things that you talked about today and perhaps do a few things for their health.
Sure. The website is RCP for root cause protocol, rcp123.org. People that might be familiar with Facebook, there's a Facebook group called the Magnesium Advocacy Group. And there's also, that's the group, and then there's also an RCP page. And we've got, a community, the course that you talked about. I'll be coming out with a book in probably September. I don't have the website for that yet.
We'll have to have you back on then, and I'll help you promote the cure.
That'd be a lot of fun. And it's going to be Cure Fatigue. It's the root cause of all the problems that people have, is overcoming their energy deficiency. And then I'm also going to come out with a copper product in the fall as well to kind of sync up with the book. Like, if you tell people what the problem is, you better have the solution, right?
Yes.
So do that.
And I love that. I love the fact that the that you're saying cure fatigue, everybody's going to want to grab that book. And then you're going to have the follow-up solution. That's perfect.
Yeah, no, I think it's, I think the world is really ready for some light, really ready for some levity and getting on with their life. And that's the beauty of the RCP, is that what people have consistently said, hands down, they say, I've got more energy.
For
That's
sure.
what it's about. And when you have more energy, you have more ability to overcome your stress, but you also have more ability to do what you're here to do. Because we're all here to do something. We all have a job to
Right.
do. We all have lessons to learn. And you can't learn those lessons when you are in fatigue.
Right.
So the whole goal is to get people out of fatigue into the energy paradigm, and that they can be really productive and they can really have some impact in the planet. That's the exciting part.
And really, I learned that, so much as you start to get older, you realize that you have a budget. Unless you're fully like charged and you're taking all the things that you need to make your body be optimal, you only have so much energy. So then that kind of lessens your decisions on what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So I like being unlimited, and I love how the root cause protocol helps you to be unlimited.
And maybe when you send out the link or whatever to your followers, be sure to show them the cover to the book so they can see the play on words. When we say the word cure, we spell it differently. It's CU-RE. So we can see the symbol. CU is a symbol for copper, and copper is the cure. It really is. And so
Love that. So clever.
For people to know that.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on today. I've so much enjoyed this enlightening conversation, and I wish you much success with the book.
Well, thanks so much, Linda. Appreciate the opportunity and look forward to our continued dialogue.
And thanks everybody for listening to the Sisterhood of Sweat. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.